A mafia boss. Sterile. Impossible to father children. So when his wife said she was pregnant, he called her a liar. She disappeared that night. 5 years later, 3 kids show up at his mansion. Same eyes, same birthmark, same cold stare. He realized the truth too late. Now she's back. Not for forgiveness, for revenge. And he'll have to choose his empire or the family he threw away. This is the lie that built a legacy. And it starts now. The door shouldn't have opened. Jae-won Kim didn't allow interruptions, not during strategy meetings, not when blood debts were being calculated in the room behind him, not when the world outside his mansion gates knew better than to breathe too loud. But the door opened anyway, and 3 children walked in. He didn't move at first. His body had been trained not to react, not to flinch when guns were drawn, not to blink when men begged for their lives. But this was different. The oldest couldn't have been more than 5. A boy. Dark curls falling over a face that looked like it had been carved from Jae-won's own reflection. Sharp jaw. Serious eyes. The kind of stare that didn't belong to a child. Behind him, 2 smaller figures. A girl with her brother's intensity softened by something warmer. And another boy, quieter, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Jae-won's hand tightened on the edge of the table. "Sir!" His head of security stepped forward, voice tight. "We tried to stop them, but the woman..." "What woman?" And then she walked in. Hana. 5 years had changed her. Not in the way time softens people, but in the way survival sharpens them. She was leaner now, stronger. Her eyes carried a weight that hadn't been there before, like she'd seen things even he couldn't imagine, and he'd seen everything. She didn't look at him right away. She looked at the children first, made sure they were safe, made sure they were standing close. Then finally, her gaze lifted. "Hello, Jae-won." Her voice was steady, too steady, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times and refused to let it crack now. He stood slowly. The room behind him had gone silent. 12 men who controlled half the city's underground operations were watching a ghost walk back into the life of a man who didn't believe in second chances. "You're not supposed to be here." His voice was low, controlled. But underneath, something ancient and volatile was stirring. "I know. I could have you removed." "You could." She stepped closer. The children followed. "But you won't." "Why not?" She smiled then. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who'd already won a war he didn't know they were fighting. "Because," she said softly, "they're yours." The words landed like a blade between ribs. Jae-won's eyes flicked to the children, back to her. His jaw tightened. "That's impossible." "I know what the doctors told you." Her voice didn't waver. "I know what you believed, what you still believe." "I'm sterile, Hana." "You were wrong." Silence. The kind that swallows entire rooms. The kind that makes men with guns nervous because they don't know what comes next. Jae-won took a step forward. Then another. Until he was close enough to see the faint scar on her collarbone, the one she'd gotten the night they met. Close enough to smell the jasmine soap she still used. Close enough to remember everything he'd tried to bury. "You told me you were pregnant 5 years ago?" he said quietly. "I didn't believe you then either." "I know. You left that night." "I had to." "Why come back now?" Her eyes didn't leave his. "Because they deserve to know their father, even if he's a monster." The oldest boy stepped forward then, bold, unafraid. He looked up at Jae-won with eyes that mirrored his own and said, "Are you really our dad?" Jae-won's chest tightened. He'd killed men for less than a question. He'd built an empire on fear and silence, and the absolute certainty that he controlled every variable in his world. But this was beyond control. He crouched down slowly, eye level with the boy. And for the first time in years, Jae-won Kim, the man who ruled the underworld without mercy, didn't know what to say. So he looked, at the boy's face, at the sharp angles and serious mouth, at the birthmark just below his left ear. The same birthmark Jae-won had, the same one his father had, the same one no one outside his bloodline carried. His hand moved before he could stop it, gentle, careful. He brushed the boy's hair back and saw the mark clearly. Identical. His breath caught. "What's your name?" he asked, voice rougher than he intended. Minho, the boy said. And that's Soo-jin. He pointed to his sister. And that's Tae-hyun. Jaewon's gaze moved to the other two. The girl watched him with cautious curiosity. The younger boy hid half his face behind the rabbit. They all had it. The mark. His mark. He stood abruptly, turned to Hana. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were shaking. You should have told me. I tried. Her voice cracked for the first time. You called me a liar. You said I was trying to trap you. You told me to get out and never come back. Because it was impossible. It wasn't. Her composure shattered. I didn't lie, Jaewon. I never lied. But you were so sure, so certain that you couldn't be a father that you didn't even consider. She stopped, took a breath. I left because staying would have destroyed me. And them. The room was suffocating now. Jaewon looked at the children again. 3 small lives that shouldn't exist. 3 impossible truths standing in his fortress. Why now? He asked again, quieter this time. Hana's eyes softened. Just a fraction. Because Minho asked about you. And I couldn't keep lying to him anymore. Jaewon felt something crack inside him. Something he thought had been sealed off years ago. He was a crime lord. A king of shadows. A man who didn't feel. But right now, standing in front of the family he didn't know he had, he felt everything. They didn't leave. Jaewon told himself he should make them. He should call security, escort them out, return to the meeting, finish the business of blood and money like he always did. But he didn't. Instead, he watched as Hana quietly settled the children in one of the sitting rooms, a space that had never seen anything innocent until now. Minho explored cautiously, fingers tracing the edges of expensive furniture. Soo-jin sat with perfect posture, observing everything. Tae-hyun stayed close to his mother, rabbit tucked under his arm. Jaewon stood in the doorway, silent. Hana didn't look at him as she spoke. They haven't eaten since this morning. It wasn't a request. It was a fact. A mother protecting her children even in the house of the man who'd abandoned them. He pulled out his phone, sent a single text. 3 minutes later, his housekeeper appeared with food. Soft things. Safe things. Fruit and rice and soup that didn't require explanation. The children ate quietly. Too quietly. Like they'd learned early not to take up space. It made something violent stir in Jaewon's chest. Hana finally looked at him then. We're not staying long. I just needed you to see them. To know. Know what? That they're real. Her voice was steady again, armor back in place. That you were wrong, that's all. That's all? He stepped into the room. His presence filled it immediately. Dark, imposing, unavoidable. You bring 3 children into my home. Tell me they're mine and think you can just leave? Yes. No. Her eyes flashed. You don't get to decide that. I do now. You gave up that right 5 years ago? The air between them crackled. Old wounds. Old rage. Old love buried under layers of survival and pride. Minho looked up from his food. Are you fighting? Both adults froze. Hana's expression softened instantly. No, sweetheart. We're just talking. It sounds like fighting, Soo-jin observed, matter of fact. Jaewon's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being watched, analyzed, seen, especially not by children. His children. The thought still didn't feel real. He crossed the room slowly and sat down. Not close, but not distant either. Somewhere in between, where a stranger might sit, where someone trying not to scare small things would sit. I'm not fighting with your mother, he said quietly. Minho studied him. Do you fight a lot? With other people, not with her. Why not? Because. Jaewon hesitated. He'd negotiated million-dollar deals, ordered executions, dismantled rival families, but explaining himself to a 5-year-old, that was uncharted territory. Because she's different, he said finally. Different how? Hana made a soft sound. Almost a laugh. Almost a sob. Jaewon's eyes flicked to her, then back to Minho. She's the only person who ever walked away from me. The boy considered this. Mom says you're important, that you do big things. She's right. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? Silence. The question hung in the air like smoke, heavy, unavoidable. Jaewon had been called many things: king, devil, monster, god of the underworld, but no one had ever asked him that question so plainly, so honestly. He looked at Hana. She wasn't helping. She wanted to see how he'd answer. "I don't know," he said finally. It was the most honest thing he'd said in years. Minho nodded slowly. Like that answer made sense to him. Mom says people can be both. Jaewon's throat tightened. Soojin leaned forward then. "Do you have toys here?" The shift in topic was jarring, but also relief. "No," Jaewon admitted. "Why not?" "I don't have children here, usually." "You do now," she said simply. And there it was. The truth neither he nor Hana had said out loud yet. He did have children now. 3 of them. Real. Breathing. Impossible. His. Taehyun finally spoke, voice small. "Can we stay tonight?" Hana stiffened. "We have a hotel." "Stay." The word came out harder than Jaewon intended. He softened his tone. "You came all this way. Stay. One night." Jaewon, "Please." That word didn't come easy to him. It tasted foreign, vulnerable, but it worked. Hana's resistance wavered. She looked at the children. Tired, travel-worn. Taehyun's eyes were already heavy. "One night," she said finally. Jaewon nodded. He didn't smile. He didn't know how to anymore. But something in his chest loosened. Just a little. Just enough to let them stay. The mansion had 30 rooms. Jaewon gave them the east wing, far from the parts of the house where business happened, where men came and went in the dark, where deals were made in languages the children shouldn't hear. Hana settled them into beds too large for their small bodies. Minho claimed the one by the window. Soojin wanted the one with the softest pillows. Taehyun refused to let go of his rabbit. She kissed each of them, whispered goodnight, waited until their breathing slowed. Then she stepped into the hallway. Jaewon was waiting. He didn't say anything, just gestured for her to follow. They walked in silence through halls lined with art worth more than most people's lives, past rooms she'd once known, past memories she'd tried to forget. He led her to his study. The door closed behind them with a soft click. "Whiskey?" he offered. "No." He poured himself one anyway, drank it slow, let the burn settle before he spoke. "When did you know? That I was pregnant?" Hana leaned against the desk, arms crossed, guarded. 2 weeks after I left. And you didn't come back. You made it very clear I wasn't welcome. His hand tightened on the glass. "I thought you were lying." "I know. The doctors said—" "I know what they said, Jaewon." Her voice was sharp now. "But I was there that night. I know what happened between us. And I know what I felt when those tests came back positive. You could have—" "What? Begged you to believe me? Forced you to listen?" She laughed bitterly. "You were the most powerful man in the city. I was no one. Who do you think people would have believed?" He set the glass down hard. "I would have—" "You wouldn't." She stepped closer. "You were too convinced, too certain, and I was too tired to fight a war I couldn't win. So you just left. I survived." The weight of those words settled between them. Survived. Not lived. Not thrived. Survived. "Where did you go?" His voice was quieter now. "Does it matter?" "Yes." She hesitated. Then, "Far. Somewhere you'd never find me." I looked. That surprised her. "You did?" "For 6 months." He turned to face her fully. "I had every contact, every resource searching. You vanished." "I had to." "Why?" "Because I was alone, pregnant, and terrified." Her voice cracked. "And you were the only person I'd ever loved, and you looked at me like I was a stranger trying to trap you." The room felt too small suddenly. Jaewon moved toward her, slowly, like approaching something fragile. "I was wrong," he said. "I know. I should have believed you." "Yes. If I'd known." "You'd have what?" Her eyes were wet now, but she refused to let the tears fall. "Built us a life while running an empire built on violence? Raised children in a world where people disappear in the night? Made me watch you become more monster than man?" He flinched. "I left because I loved them more than I loved you," she continued. "And I loved you enough to know that world would have destroyed them." destroyed me, maybe even destroyed you. And now? Now they asked about their father, and I couldn't keep pretending you didn't exist. Jaewon reached out, stopped just short of touching her face. His hand hovered there, uncertain. I don't know how to be a father. I know. I don't know how to be anything but this. I know that too. His hand dropped. Then why bring them here? Hannah finally let one tear fall, just one. Because they deserve the truth. Even if it's ugly, even if it hurts. They deserve to know where they came from. And what do you deserve? She smiled sadly. Nothing you can give me. The words cut deeper than any blade. Jaewon turned away, walked to the window, looked out at the city he owned but couldn't control. The birthmark, he said quietly. That's how you knew for sure. Yes. It's on all three? All three. He closed his eyes. My father had it, his father before him. Every firstborn son in my bloodline. I know. But there's three of them. Triplets. Her voice was soft now, gentle. The doctors said it was nearly impossible. But there they were. Jaewon's hands pressed against the glass. I was so sure. You were wrong. I destroyed us. Yes. Can it be fixed? Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know. But they're here now. And that has to mean something. Jaewon turned back to her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes that had sentenced men to death without hesitation, carried something raw. Regret. Hope. Fear. Stay longer than one night, he said. Jaewon. Not for me. For them. He stepped closer. Let them know me. Let me know them. If you still want to leave after that, I won't stop you. You promise? I promise. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the control. But all she found was a man standing in the ruins of what he'd destroyed, asking for a chance to rebuild. 1 week? She said finally. 1 week. They stood there. Two people who'd once been everything to each other. Now strangers holding on to three impossible truths sleeping down the hall. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, something fragile began to grow. Not love, not yet. But maybe, just maybe. Something close. Morning came soft through the east wing windows. Jaewon hadn't slept. He'd stood in his study watching the sun climb over a city that feared him, wondering how 3 children had walked through his door and dismantled everything he thought he knew about himself. At 6 a.m., he heard movement, small feet on marble floors, whispers. A child's laugh quickly shushed. He found them in the kitchen. Minho was trying to reach the cupboards, standing on a chair he'd dragged across the floor. Soojin was instructing him with the confidence of someone twice her age. Taehyun sat at the table, rabbit in his lap, watching everything with wide eyes. Hana wasn't there yet. The children froze when they saw him. Jaewon froze too. This was his kitchen. His domain. A place where staff worked in silence and efficiency. Where he drank black coffee and read reports about shipments and territories and debts that needed collecting. Not a place for children climbing furniture. We were hungry, Minho said quickly, defensive, like he expected punishment. Something in Jaewon's chest cracked at that look. I can see that. He moved slowly into the room, non-threatening. What were you looking for? Cereal? Or bread? Anything. Minho's hands gripped the chair, ready to jump down and run if needed. Jaewon realized then, they didn't know they were safe here. They didn't know he wouldn't hurt them. Of course they didn't. They'd only met him yesterday, and everything they knew about him came from a mother who'd fled his world to protect them. He opened the cupboard Minho had been reaching for, pulled down a box of expensive imported cereal that his housekeeper kept stocked even though he never touched it. This? He asked. Minho's eyes widened. Yes. Jaewon set it on the counter, then grabbed bowls, spoons, milk from the refrigerator. The children watched him like he was performing magic. Sit, he said quietly. They obeyed. He poured cereal into 3 bowls with the careful precision of a man who'd never done this before but refused to fail at it. Added milk. Set them down in front of each child. Soojin picked up her spoon immediately. Thank you. You're welcome. Taehyun just stared at his bowl. You don't like cereal? Jaewon asked. The boy shook his head. What do you like? Silence. Minho answered for him. He likes eggs, scrambled, with cheese. Jae-won looked at Taehyun. That true? A small nod. All right. He'd watched his chef prepare breakfast 1,000 times, never paid attention to the details. But muscle memory was a strange thing. His hands moved almost automatically, cracking eggs, whisking them, heating a pan. The kitchen filled with the smell of butter and cheese. Minho and Soojin ate their cereal quietly, but their eyes followed every movement he made. When the eggs were done, Jae-won plated them carefully, set them in front of Taehyun. The boy looked up at him, really looked, like he was trying to understand something. Then he picked up his fork and took a bite. His face lit up. Good? Jae-won asked. Taehyun nodded enthusiastically, and Jae-won felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the pride of closing a deal or eliminating a rival. Something quieter. Warmer. He'd made his son smile. The door opened. Hana appeared, still in the clothes from yesterday, hair pulled back hastily. She stopped when she saw the scene. Her children eating breakfast. Jae-won standing at the stove, spatula still in hand. I woke up and they were gone, she said, voice tight with worry. I thought they were hungry, Jae-won said simply. Minho grinned. He made Taehyun eggs. They're really good. Hannah's expression shifted through several emotions at once. Surprise, relief, something that looked almost like pain. I see that, she said softly. Jae-won set the spatula down. Coffee? Please. He poured 2 cups. Black for him. He remembered she took hers with cream and sugar. He prepared it without asking. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed. The contact lasted half a second. It felt like falling. Hana pulled back first, wrapped both hands around the mug like it could anchor her. Thank you, she murmured. They stood there. Not quite together, not quite apart. The children kept eating, creating a pocket of normalcy in a house that had never known it. I have meetings today, Jae-won said quietly, but I'll cancel them. You don't have to. I want to. He looked at the children. If that's all right? Hana followed his gaze, saw Minho scraping the last of his cereal from the bowl, saw Soojin sitting perfectly straight, always watching, always analyzing, saw Taehyun finishing his eggs with pure contentment. 1 week, she reminded him. I remember. Don't make promises you can't keep. His jaw tightened. I won't. She wanted to believe him. He could see it in her eyes, the hope fighting with experience, the part of her that had loved him once wrestling with the part that knew what he was capable of. Okay, she said finally. Soojin looked up then. Are we going somewhere today? Jae-won and Hana both turned to her. Where would you like to go? Jae-won asked. The little girl thought carefully. Somewhere with trees and sky. Mom says we used to live in a place with lots of trees. Hana's breath caught. Jae-won noticed. He noticed everything about her. The way her hands tightened on the mug. The way her eyes went somewhere far away. There's a park, he said. Private. Quiet. We could go there. Minho perked up. Really? If your mother agrees. All 3 children turned to Hana. She looked at Jae-won, at the man who'd once shattered her world, who now stood in his kitchen making eggs for a son who didn't know how to trust him yet. Okay, she said again. 2 hours later, they stood in a park that didn't appear on any public maps. It belonged to Jae-won. 10 acres of manicured gardens and wild spaces hidden behind walls that kept the world out. A place he'd bought years ago and never used because beauty without purpose felt like a waste. Now it had purpose. Minho ran ahead immediately, drawn to a grove of cherry trees just beginning to bloom. Soojin followed more carefully, stopping to examine flowers and stones. Taehyun stayed close to Hana, rabbit clutched tight. Jae-won walked beside her, silent, uncertain. You never mentioned you owned a park, Hana said. You never asked. When we were together, you never told me about most things. He didn't deny it. I kept you separate, from the business, from everything. I know. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. She glanced at him. You didn't want me to see what you really were. Maybe. Not maybe, definitely. They walked in silence for a moment. Does it scare you? He asked quietly. What I am? Hannah stopped, turned to face him fully. It terrifies me, she said honestly. Not for me, for them. I ran because I didn't want them growing up in a world where violence is currency and fear is power. I didn't want them to think that's normal. It's all I know. I know that too. Her voice softened. But you made Taehyun eggs this morning. You brought us to a place with trees because Soojin asked. You're trying. Trying doesn't erase what I've done. No, it doesn't. She reached out, almost touched his arm, stopped herself. But it means something. Ahead of them, Minho had climbed a tree. Soojin was scolding him for going too high. Taehyun was laughing, actually laughing at his siblings. Jaewon watched them, his children, his blood, his impossible second chance. I don't know how to be good, he admitted. Then don't be good. Hannah's eyes held his. Just be better, better than yesterday. Better than the version of yourself that let me walk away. And if I fail, then we leave. And you let us go. Her voice was firm. That was the deal. He nodded slowly. In the distance, Minho called out, Mom, Dad, look how high I am. Dad? The word hung in the air. Jaewon's throat tightened. Hannah's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Neither of them corrected him. They stayed until sunset. Minho showed Jaewon every tree he'd climbed, every rock formation he'd discovered. Soojin asked 100 questions about the flowers and butterflies. Taehyun fell asleep in Hannah's arms, rabbit tucked under his chin. When they returned to the mansion, the children were exhausted, happy, safe. Hannah put them to bed again, kissed their foreheads, whispered love into their dreams. When she emerged, Jaewon was waiting in the hallway. Thank you, she said. For today. Don't thank me, they're my children too. The possessiveness in his voice wasn't threatening. It was something else. Something protective. Hannah studied him in the dim light. You really didn't know, did you? That you could still. That it was possible. The doctors were certain. After the accident when I was younger. He stopped. Old pain flickering across his features. They said I'd never father children. I believed them. What accident? He hesitated. Then, when I was 17, rival family. They wanted to send my father a message. I was the message. Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. I survived, Jaewon continued flatly. But the damage was extensive. They said my chances were less than 1%. I accepted it, built my life around it. And when I told you I was pregnant, I thought you were lying, or confused, or that the child wasn't mine. His voice dropped. I thought a lot of things, all of them wrong. They stood in the quiet hallway, years of pain and misunderstanding between them. The night before I left, Hannah said carefully. That was the night, wasn't it? He nodded. We were fighting, about something I can't even remember now, and then, we weren't fighting at the end, he finished. No, we weren't. The memory hung between them, raw, intimate. 1%, Hannah whispered. And we got 3. Impossible odds. The best kind. Jaewon's hand reached for hers, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm, solid, real. I can't change the past, he said quietly. I can't undo the words I said or the pain I caused, but I can try. To be better, she finished. Yes. She squeezed his hand once, brief, careful, then let go. One day at a time, Jaewon. One day at a time. She turned to leave, stopped, looked back. They already love you, you know, even though they just met you. I can see it. His breath caught. Don't break their hearts, she said softly. I'll survive it again if I have to. But they won't. With that, she disappeared into her room. Jaewon stood alone in the hallway. For the first time in his life, the weight of his empire felt lighter than the weight of this responsibility. 3 children sleeping down the hall, 1 woman who'd once loved him, and 7 days to prove he could be more than the monster he'd become. He didn't sleep that night either, but it wasn't power keeping him awake. It was hope. Day 3 began with a phone call Jaewon couldn't ignore. His second-in-command, Min-jae, had been patient. 2 days of canceled meetings, 2 days of their boss vanishing into the east wing of the mansion like he'd fallen off the face of the earth. But patience had limits. even for family. We have a situation, Min-jae said the moment Jae-won answered. Handle it. I can't. It requires your direct authorization. Jae-won closed his eyes. He was standing in his study, door locked, trying to steal 15 minutes before the children woke up. Before he had to figure out how to be a father for another day. What situation? The shipment from Busan. Customs is asking questions. If you don't show up and smooth things over, we lose everything. When? Today. Noon. 4 hours. Jae-won looked at the window. Outside, morning light was painting the gardens gold. Somewhere in the east wing, 3 children were waking up, learning to trust him a little more each day. I'll be there, he said finally. He hung up before Min-jae could respond. Breakfast was different now. The children came to the kitchen expecting him. Minho climbed into the chair he'd claimed as his. Soojin asked for tea instead of juice because she wanted to be more grown up. Taehyun set his rabbit on the table and waited patiently for his eggs. Jae-won made them without thinking now. Muscle memory building in real time. Hana appeared last, hair still damp from a shower. She'd started sleeping better. He could see it in her face. Some of the exhaustion fading, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. Good morning, she said. Morning. She poured coffee for both of them. The routine was forming, small, domestic, dangerous, because routines meant permanence, and permanence meant hope, and hope was the most dangerous thing either of them could feel. I have to go out today, Jae-won said carefully. The kitchen went quiet. Minho looked up from his cereal. Where? Work. What kind of work? Soojin asked. Jae-won hesitated. What could he say? That he ran an empire built on fear? That his work involved shipments that couldn't see daylight and negotiations that ended with people disappearing? Business, he said finally. Nothing exciting. Can we come? Minho asked. No. The word came out too sharp, too final. Minho's face fell. Jae-won softened his tone. It's not appropriate for children. I'll be back before dinner. Promise? Taehyun asked quietly. And there it was. The question that gutted him. Because how many promises had he broken in his life? How many assurances had been lies wrapped in authority? But this was different. This was his son asking if he'd come back. I promise, Jae-won said. Hana caught his eye across the table. Her expression was unreadable. But he saw the warning there. Don't make promises you can't keep. He nodded slightly. After breakfast, he prepared to leave. Suit. Tie. The armor of his world. Each piece transforming him back into the man the city feared. He was adjusting his cufflinks when small footsteps approached. Minho stood in the doorway of his bedroom, watching. You look different, the boy said. Different how? Scary. Jae-won's hands stilled. Minho stepped closer. Brave. Always so brave. Are you a different person when you leave? The question was too perceptive for a 5-year-old. Jae-won crouched down, eye level. Honest. Yes, he said. Why? Because the world outside requires a different version of me. Is that version bad? Jae-won thought about the men he'd destroyed, the empires he'd built on their bones, the fear he cultivated like a garden. Sometimes, he admitted. Minho processed this. But you come back here and you're our dad. I try to be. That's the version I like better. Something in Jae-won's chest shattered and rebuilt itself simultaneously. He reached out, ruffled Minho's hair gently. Me too. The boy grinned. Will you play with us when you get back? What do you want to play? Hide and seek? This house is huge. It would be perfect. Jae-won had never played hide and seek in his life. Okay, he said anyway. Minho's smile could have powered the city. The meeting was exactly what Jae-won expected. Tense. Dangerous. Men with guns standing in shadows, while he negotiated with customs officials who knew exactly what he was but needed plausible deniability. Money changed hands, papers were signed, the shipment was cleared, business as usual. But halfway through, his phone buzzed. A message from Hana. Soojin asked when you're coming home. I told her soon. Don't make me a liar. He stared at the screen. Home. She'd called the mansion home. Min-jae noticed his distraction. Everything all right? Fine. We done here? Almost. There's one more thing. Handle it. But I said, handle it. Jae-won stood. I have somewhere to be. Min-jae's eyes widened. In 10 years of working together, his boss had never left a meeting early, never prioritized anything over business. Sir, if this is it's about family, Jae-won said flatly. Something you should understand, considering you have 3 kids of your own. Min-jae's expression shifted. Understanding. Respect. Go, he said quietly. I'll finish here. Jae-won didn't wait for permission. He made it back by 4 p.m. The house was full of noise when he entered, children's laughter echoing through halls that had only ever known silence. He followed the sound, found them in the library, a room he'd filled with books he never read, collected for the appearance of culture rather than any love of stories. Now his children had pulled half the books off the shelves and built a fort. Hana sat in the middle of the chaos, reading aloud from a picture book about dragons and princesses. Taehyun was curled in her lap. Minho and Soojin were acting out the story with stuffed animals they'd found somewhere. None of them noticed him at first. He just watched. This was what the mansion could be. Not a fortress, not a monument to power. A home. Finally, Soojin looked up. You came back. All activity stopped. 3 children stared at him. Then Minho launched himself forward. You promised, and you kept it. He crashed into Jae-won's legs with the full force of a 5-year-old who'd learned to trust. Jae-won caught him instinctively, lifted him up, the boy's arms wrapped around his neck. I keep my promises, Jae-won said quietly. I know. Minho grinned. That's why you're a good guy. Jae-won's eyes met Hana's over the child's head. She was crying. Silent tears streaming down her face as she watched the father of her children become real. Soojin approached more carefully. Will you read to us? I don't know this story. That's okay, Mom can help. So Jae-won, the crime lord of the East Coast, the man who made senators nervous and rivals disappear, sat down on the library floor. Hana handed him the book. His children gathered around, and he read about dragons who learned to be gentle, and princesses who learned to be brave in kingdoms that found peace after war. His voice was rough at first, uncertain. But by the 3rd page, something shifted. The story wasn't just words anymore. It was a promise, a glimpse of what could be. When he finished, Taehyun climbed into his lap without being asked. Just settled there like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jae-won's arms wrapped around his son automatically. Protective. Gentle. Real. Again, Taehyun whispered. So Jae-won read it again. And again. Until the sun set and the children fell asleep one by one, trusting him to keep them safe. Later, after they'd carried the children to bed, Jae-won and Hana stood in the library surrounded by scattered books and fort ruins. You came back early, she observed. I promised. You could have broken it. You've broken promises before. Not to them. His voice was firm. Never to them. Hana smiled, small, sad. You're changing. Is that bad? I don't know yet. She started picking up books, rebuilding order from chaos. The man I loved 5 years ago couldn't have sat on that floor and read fairy tales. Maybe he could have, if he'd had a reason. She paused, looked at him. And now you have 3 reasons. 4. The word hung between them. Hana's breath caught. Jae-won stepped closer, not touching, just close. I know I don't deserve another chance with you, he said quietly. I know what I destroyed, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for time. Time for what? To prove that the man you're seeing now isn't an act, that he's who I become when I have something worth protecting. And when you walk out that door tomorrow, when you go back to your world, then I come home to this one, and I keep choosing it, every single day. Hana's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the inevitable betrayal. But all she found was honesty. Raw, painful, real. 4 more days, she whispered. That's all we agreed to. Then I'll make them count. She nodded slowly, turned back to the books, but he saw her smile, small, fragile, full of dangerous, terrifying hope. On the morning of day 7, Jae-won woke to find Minho sitting on the floor outside his bedroom door. The boy looked up when the door opened. I wanted to make sure you didn't leave early. Jae-won's heart cracked. Why would I leave early? Mom said this is our last day, that we have to go back to our regular life tomorrow. Minho's voice was small, scared. I don't want to go. Jae-won sat down on the floor beside him. Why not? Because this is better. You're here. Mom smiles more. Tae-hyun doesn't have nightmares. Minho looked at him with eyes too old for his face. Can't we just stay? That's up to your mother. But what do you want? Jae-won had negotiated billion-dollar deals, stared down men twice his size, built an empire through sheer will and ruthlessness. But answering his son's question honestly, that took more courage than any of it. I want you to stay, he said quietly. All of you, forever. Minho's face lit up. Really? Really? Then tell Mom. She'll listen if you ask. Jae-won pulled the boy close. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I'm asking her to trust me, and I gave her a lot of reasons not to. But you're different now. Am I? Jae-won asked. Or am I just better at pretending? Minho pulled back, studied his father's face with that unnerving intensity. You're not pretending, he said finally. When you made me eggs, you weren't pretending. When you read to us, you weren't pretending. When you came back early because you promised, that was real. Out of the mouths of children, Jae-won's throat tightened. Your mother is smart to be careful, he said. But you love us, right? The question was so direct, so innocent, so impossible to deflect. Yes, Jae-won said. I love you. Then that's all that matters. If only it were that simple. The final day passed too quickly. Breakfast, a walk in the gardens, lunch where Soojin asked 1,000 questions about flowers, and Tae-hyun finally spoke in full sentences instead of whispers. They played hide-and-seek like Jae-won had promised. He found Minho immediately because the boy chose the most obvious spots. Soojin was tactical, hiding in places adults wouldn't think to look. Tae-hyun always hid with his rabbit, which gave him away every time. Hana watched from the sidelines, smiling, but her eyes carried the weight of a decision she'd been putting off for 7 days. As sunset approached, Jae-won found her standing on the balcony off the east wing. Alone. They don't want to leave, he said quietly. I know. Do you? She turned to face him. Want to leave, or no, they don't want to? Both. Hana looked out at the city sprawling below them. I built a life for us. It's small, simple, safe. They go to a good school, have friends, normal routines. And here? Here they have a father who reads them stories and makes eggs and keeps promises. Her voice cracked. Here they have everything I wanted to give them but couldn't. So stay. It's not that easy, Jae-won. Why not? She turned on him then, eyes blazing. Because what happens when your world catches up? When someone decides to send you a message through them? When they're used as leverage or targets or... She stopped, breathing hard. I left to protect them from exactly that. I would never let anyone hurt them. You can't promise that. You don't control everything, no matter how much power you have. He stepped closer. Then I'll give it up. She froze. What? The empire, the business, all of it. His voice was steady, certain. If that's what it takes to keep you here, I'll walk away. Hana stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You're lying. I'm not. That empire is who you are. No. He moved closer still. It's what I built when I had nothing else to build. But now I have them. I have you. And if I have to choose... Jae-won, stop. I choose you. Stop. Her hands came up, pressed against his chest, creating distance, creating safety. You can't just... She struggled for words. You can't just decide to be a different person because you want something. Why not? Because that's not how it works. People don't change overnight. I've had 7 days, he said quietly. 7 days to remember who I was before I became this. 7 days to see what I could be instead. That's not overnight. Tears spilled down her cheeks now. And tomorrow, when the world demands the crime lord back, when Min-jae calls with an emergency, when someone challenges your territory, then I handle it, and I come home, to you, to them. He cupped her face gently. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying I won't make mistakes, but I'm saying I want to try. Why? She was sobbing now. Why now? Why not 5 years ago when I begged you to believe me? Because I was a coward 5 years ago. His voice broke. I was terrified of being vulnerable, of needing someone, of building something that could be destroyed. So I pushed you away, and I lost everything that mattered. You built an empire. I built a prison. He pressed his forehead to hers, and I've been dying inside it ever since you left. They stood there, broken, together, breathing the same air. I don't know if I can trust you, Hannah whispered. I know. I don't know if this is real or if you'll wake up tomorrow and regret it. I know that too. Then why are you asking me to stay? Because I love you. Simple, direct, true. I never stopped, I just forgot how. Her hands fisted in his shirt, holding on, letting go, choosing and unchosen simultaneously. If I stay, she said carefully, things have to change. Really change. Tell me how. No more secrets. No more keeping me separate from your world because you think it protects me. If I'm in this, I'm in all of it. He nodded. And the children come first, always. Every decision, every choice, they're the priority. Agreed. And if, her voice broke, if I ever feel like they're in danger because of your world, we leave. No arguments, no negotiations. You have my word. She pulled back enough to see his face, to search for the lie that would shatter this fragile thing they were building. But he met her gaze without flinching. 1 month, she said finally. What? We stay for 1 month, trial basis. If it works, we talk about longer. If it doesn't, it will work. You don't know that. I do. His hands framed her face. Because I won't let it fail. Not again. Hannah closed her eyes, felt the weight of the decision settling into her bones. Then, okay. 1 month. Jaewon kissed her. Not gentle, not tentative. Like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. She kissed him back. 5 years of anger and pain and love that had never really died pouring into the space between them. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. The children, Hannah said, we should tell them. Together? Together. They found them in the library again. In their fort. Playing some elaborate game involving dragons and knights and impossible quests. Minho saw them first. Are you here to say goodbye? The hope in his voice. The fear. It destroyed them both. Jaewon crouched down. Hannah beside him. No, he said quietly. We're here to ask if you'd like to stay. For a while longer? 3 small faces lit up like stars. Really? Sujin breathed. Really, Hannah confirmed. If you want to. Yes! Minho launched himself at both of them. Yes. Taehyun just smiled. Quiet. Content. Safe. And Jaewon realized this was what he'd been built for. Not empires, not power, this family. That night, after the children finally fell asleep, overexcited and happy and home, Jaewon stood in his study looking out at the city he owned. Tomorrow, he'd start the process of stepping back, delegating more, creating distance between his family and the darkness he'd spent years cultivating. It wouldn't be easy. It would probably be impossible. But he'd built an empire from nothing. He could rebuild himself too. The door opened behind him. Hannah. She moved to stand beside him. Their hands found each other in the dark. No regrets yet? She asked quietly. None. Give it time. He smiled. I have a month. Just a month. To prove this is real. Then I'll make it count. She leaned her head on his shoulder. What if you can't do it? What if the Empire won't let you go? Then I'll fight it. He squeezed her hand. I've fought worse battles. Have you? No, he admitted, but I've never had a better reason to win. Outside, the city hummed, dangerous, beautiful, alive. Inside, 3 children slept peacefully, and 2 people who'd loved and lost and found each other again stood in the darkness, choosing hope over fear. It wasn't a happy ending, not yet, but it was a beginning, and sometimes that's all you need. The end, or just the start.